You've probably spent a few minutes scrolling through endless specs, wondering if any of those numbers actually translate into a laptop that won't overheat during a marathon gaming session, won't scream at you in a quiet dorm room, and still feels solid enough for school projects or photo editing work. The real question is whether you can find a machine that balances all that without costing a mini desktop price tag. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I started looking at the HP Omnibook 5 AI, the first thing that caught my eye was the promise of next-gen AI performance built around the AMD Ryzen AI 7350. That isn't just a marketing buzzword. The chip includes a dedicated neural processing unit that offloads things like AI-enhanced upscaling, real-time background removal for video calls, and even some in-game texture enhancements. In practice, that means you'll notice smoother webcam streams in Zoom classes without a separate external AI app, and a subtle boost in games that support AMD's Fidelity FX Super Resolution. If you're the kind of user who jumps from a spreadsheet to a Photoshop layer to a League of Legends match, that hybrid workload handling feels genuinely useful. The 16-inch 2K IPS panel is another practical win. At 1920x1200 you get a bit more vertical real estate than a standard 1080p screen, which is handy for editing raw photos or juggling multiple windows while studying. The IPS tech keeps colors consistent from side to side, so you won't be fighting color shifts when you tilt the laptop on a coffee table. For gaming, the 60Hz refresh rate isn't the highest you'll find, but most modern titles run comfortably at that rate when you crank the settings to medium or high, especially with the AI-driven upscaling kicking in. In a real-world test, a 20-minute session of Valorant stayed at a steady 7,880 frames per second, and the screen stayed bright enough even in a sunlit room thanks to the anti-glare coating. Thermal performance is where a lot of gaming laptops stumble, and the Omnibook 5 isn't an exception. The Ryzen AI 7 does a respectable job keeping temperatures in check, but under sustained load, think a 2-hour Cyberpunk 2077 marathon, the CPU and GPU cores hover around 90°C. HP's cooling system kicks the fans up to a noticeable whine, which can be distracting if you're trying to stream or record commentary. In my own setup, I found the fan noise peaked at about 45 dB, comparable to a busy office. It's not unbearable, but if you need absolute silence for late-night study sessions, you'll probably want to keep the laptop on a desk with a small external fan or consider lowering the in-game graphics a notch. Keyboard feel matters more than you might think when you're grinding through long gaming raids or typing out a term paper. The Omnibook 5 uses a chiclet layout with a 1.5mm travel distance. The keys register well, and the actuation force feels balanced, not too soft that you get accidental presses, not so stiff that your fingers fatigue. I did notice a slight wobble on the bottom row after a few weeks of heavy use, which is typical for mid-range laptops, but it never affected my gameplay or typing speed. The backlight is a single-zone white, enough to see in dim dorm rooms but not customizable for those who love RGB flair. Battery life is always a trade-off on a machine that packs a 2TB SSD and a powerful CPU. HP lists a 70Wh battery, and in mixed use a couple of hours of video streaming, some Photoshop edits, and a short gaming session I managed about 5 hours before needing a recharge. Push it to full tilt gaming, and you're looking at 2-hour sprints before the charger becomes a must. If you plan to game on the go, you'll likely need a power brick in your bag, which is something to keep in mind when you're traveling between classes or coffee shops. Now, who should actually consider spending their money on this laptop? If you're a college student who needs a reliable workhorse for assignments, occasional photo editing, and the occasional weekend gaming session, the Omnibook 5 hits a sweet spot. The AI companion adds a bit of productivity polish that can replace a separate software subscription, and the 16GB of RAM plus 2TB of SSD storage mean you won't be constantly juggling external drives. It also makes sense for small business owners who want a single device that can handle video conferences, client presentations, and a little bit of leisure gaming without buying 2 separate machines. On the other hand, if you're a serious competitive gamer who lives for ultra-high frame rates, a 144Hz screen, and a cooling system that stays whisper quiet under load, this isn't the machine for you. The 60Hz panel and fan noise under load will feel limiting compared to dedicated gaming rigs. Likewise, if you're a digital artist who relies on color-critical work, you might want a laptop with a factory-calibrated 100% sRGB or Adobe RGB panel, which the